I also have to apologize. Oh, I have to apologize if on the video you can see my nose studs like coming out of the front of my nose because
I didn't
yeah,
notice, but that is an amazing intro to the podcast because that's the first thing people will listen to.
shit. I mean
No,
that's
it's fine.
me.
Hi, Sophia. How are you? Apart
Hey
from your
Dan, I'm
nose,
really
what like have you is you've always had your nose pierced though, right?
this
Since I've
bit
known you.
and then this one, yes, but it came out. So I
Okay.
went to get it redone and thought, why not get a second as well?
Oh, apologies. I hadn't noticed your second. That's why.
Yeah. So I've got one on each side, one in the middle.
Well, I'm so glad that people have the opportunity to watch this because obviously they're just the first thing they're going to look for now, as well as listen to this. They're going to go and look for that on the video as well, because Spotify have that new function now. When you upload a Zoom file, it uploads the video as well,
I
which
didn't know that.
is kind of like YouTube-ish. Although I don't know anyone that actually sits on Spotify to watch videos.
No, me neither. But people might start.
People might start just to see this.
Yeah. But you have to get them pierced with bigger bars. So like they just poke out and it's really attractive. But anyway.
I can't see. I'm fascinated now. I can't see it, but I will have to like zoom in and have a look in a minute. Yeah, it's no biggie though. Like
Oh no, it's no drama. I'm clearly not
it's just
asked.
you do literally have to visibly show your nostrils. As I did that, then I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to show bogies or something. I think my
I'd
nose
tell
is
you
clear.
it's fine.
I know you would tell me. I've just been on a taking Daisy for a mega dog walk, which is one of the many reasons why I wanted to get you on and have a chat. Was your love for dogs, and I
Yeah.
think a newly converted cocker spaniel lover as well.
Oh my gosh. They are like every breed is so every dog is unique, but then breeds have their like similar traits.
Yeah,
And when I see you with it's did you say is it's Daisy, isn't it?
Daisy. Yeah,
When I see you with
love of my
Daisy,
life.
they are, aren't they? And I have like four spaniels that I look after. Because on top of everything else, I decided to set up a dog boarding business last year. Why not?
Why not?
Um,
You're not busy enough. That's why.
no. And like people were asking me to look after their dogs, and I'm like, okay, but I need to do it officially.
Hmm.
So got a license, set up, had hundreds of inquiries, and that was the point where I was like, fuck, like this is not a good idea.
And that is my litmus test. One of my litmus tests for as a good human. They have to like dogs, or at
So
the bare minimum, Daisy has to love them because if Daisy loves everyone, so if Daisy doesn't love you, we have issues. There
mm,
must be something off. Even if I haven't spotted it, if she'd spotted it, there's not something right there.
no, I get that. And every time I see Daisy, I'm like, I know she'd love me. Like, you know, when they push their face on you,
Yeah, no personal space.
but it like all spaniels do it, and some
Mm,
cockapoos do it, but some don't because obviously they're the mix. So yeah, spaniels, amazing
yeah,
dog.
lovely temperament. She's so great with the kids. I can't possibly put into words because we were originally. I probably bored you with this before. We were going to get a Pomsky.
Same as Apollo.
Is Polo a Pomsky?
Yeah, he's small. Look,
I've
like
just realised, by the way.
everyone,
Apologies to anyone listening. I'm going to turn my fan off. I say my
everyone
fan.
thinks he's big, but he's like he's probably.
He's more husky than Pomeranian, though,
Oh
right?
my gosh, yeah. But this
Yeah,
is the thing with the crosses. Like he's one that people didn't want because he's
he's
not great.
beautiful.
Your nose is beautiful. You can't really see him because of my. He's a oh god. He's literally when I say he's got me through some of the hardest times of my life. It's not an exaggeration.
Mm.
And we got Susan, the pug, the rescue pug. I don't know where she is.
I love dogs with human names, and I know that as a Daisy, but like Susan, I've got a friend that has a cat called Steve.
Steve the cat.
Steve the cat, and I know a Dave the dog as well. And
That's
also
amazing.
I know a Deefa the dog, as in D for
Ah,
dog.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Get it.
Yeah.
I've got a Norman who is a spaniel, which is great. But yeah, we got Susan because my husband was genuinely concerned if anything happens to Apollo, like would have to have something
How long have you had
to.
Apollo?
He's 8 now.
Oh, yeah.
But we
Well,
don't talk about him being old, so
no, because they're classed as Daisy's 7. They're classed as mature dogs after 7, aren't they? Which is really sad. Yeah, let's
don't.
not. Let's no. Let's not.
No, no,
In
no,
fact,
no. Hmm.
the dog chat. Let's save some of that. But I wanted to get you on just because you're far by one of the most interesting people I know. Obviously, we've bonded. I think we've formed a great friendship since we met last year, and I love how our little chats. And I just thought, why not record one of those? So I know a little bit about you. I know a lot
Mhm.
about what you do. I know a little bit about you. Obviously, know you've happily married. I know you're a dog lover, but I don't know much about Sophia, early days Sophia. And I know that you've endured an incredible amount. And I thought it'd be really interesting if you don't mind just talking a bit about that. Like where were you in the formative years? How did you grow up? Have you got siblings and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny as well because I got you on my podcast and you were like, hate talking about myself. And then you get me on yours and I'm like, I love talking about myself. Um, and like I said to you,
It
and
should
I've
be
said,
easy then, right?
yeah, it is easy for me. And like, I think the first thing that when we talk about our own past, me as well as everybody else will always be like, oh, but it wasn't that bad. And there's always someone worse off. And that's true. And it's good to know that. But it's also really important that we acknowledge what we've been through and what we've experienced. Um, without having to be like, oh, but it could have been worse. So, I mean, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I always ate weird. So I was one of those children that had bizarre eating habits from a really young age. I now know a lot of that was ADHD. Um, and I also know a lot of it was that my parents had severe mental illness, both of them, and they just let me develop habits and behaviors. And I think another thing that's really important, because we'll probably touch on ADHD quite a bit, so much of ADHD behaviors are also pretty normal stuff that a lot of people do that don't have ADHD. So it was loads of different things combined that meant I developed really bizarre behaviors with food. And I didn't get much attention from my parents because of their mental illness. They weren't emotionally available or supportive. Basically, I guess I can say it, they shouldn't have had kids. Like they weren't stable enough to support children.
Do you still have
And
a relationship with your parents?
my dad, yes. And my mum and dad are still married, but they've got a bizarre relationship, the opposite to what I would ever want. And I think when you go through stuff like that, you either go the same way they did, or you go the total opposite way and think, I'm going to do everything you didn't do.
You're the cycle breaker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I didn't know what that meant. That was just what I chose to do when I left home at 16. Um, but where were we? Food.
Your diagnosis with ADHD, if you don't mind, was that you not aware of that when you were younger? Was that diagnosed later in life?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed literally like 6 months ago. I'd been
Oh, okay.
diagnosed for a couple of months before I started talking about it online. Um, and I knew I had it for a while because I'd been reading research and learning about it to support clients with ADHD. And I was like, oh. But then the truth is, if people read about ADHD symptoms, they'll relate to loads of them. But it's about how it impacts you and also how it impacted you as a child. I was always told when I was younger that I was enthusiastic about stuff that I loved, but if I didn't enjoy something, then there was just nothing, and I was disruptive. Um, I was always told I was outspoken, I was inappropriate. I would do bizarre things to get attention when I was younger. Um, what else? Oh, I had severe at points OCD behaviors. So like again, that translated into food, and I would go through periods of time. The only thing I would eat was Cocoa Pops.
Okay. Yeah.
And then my dad would go and buy. So this is because they were struggling with their own mental illness. My dad would go and buy boxes and boxes of Cocoa Pops because they were like, oh, well, you've gone through periods of time of not eating, so it's better that you eat something. And I mean, I get it, but also I don't get it.
Hmm. When you mention your parents with their own struggles, do you mind? Do you know what they were? Do they know what they are?
Yeah, so now I'm pretty sure that my dad has ADHD as well, and he never knew how to understand that. So that developed into, he was never diagnosed bipolar. He was diagnosed with depression, and my mum with manic depression. Um, but he was like really happy or really sad. There was no in between. So you didn't know who was walking through the door, and he had a really high pressured job, and he was away from home a lot. He was never violent or aggressive, and I feel like I always have to say that. But then you just couldn't talk to him about anything, or you could talk to him about everything. So that was so confusing as a child, because I would want to talk to him or didn't understand my own behavior, but then a lot of the time he wasn't in a place to support me with that. And then my mum had what I now know, well, think I know because she won't talk about it now, early menopause and then a mental breakdown. And she recently did actually admit that it was a mental breakdown, but at the time, she thought she had a physical health condition, because obviously, menopause and a mental breakdown, not that they always go together, but there's mental health issues that come up or can come up with menopause. And we know there's physical symptoms for both of those things, right? So she had all of this stuff going on. But back then, because my parents were much older when they had me, so my dad was 40 and my mum was 36 when they had me. So back then, people didn't really, because I'm 34 now, so people didn't talk about mental health. Like menopause was just brushed under the carpet. It was like you just suck it up, and you don't
Yeah,
speak about these things.
there's so many comorbidities as well with those sorts of things. As you said, part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast was actually like the complex interrelationship between mental and physical health. So for
Mm,
people that experience mental health difficulties, they find it manifests in some sort of physical aches and pains or lethargy or aching bones and things like that. And similarly, people that get physically injured, they suffer
mm,
the repercussions of with their mental health as well. So
yeah.
it's entirely impossible to separate the two, which is why, sorry, I've totally interrupted you here.
No, 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 no.
When we speak about health and the spectrum of health is you can't just address one side of that. You have to address both, I think.
Otherwise,
Which
you
is
aren't doing a proper job.
yeah, and if I, you know, I know I'm speaking to someone that thinks the same in that when you're working with people, it's vast. Like you have to address both sides of it, which is why I can reflect now and think with great difficulty. I was only focusing on one side of that with coaching for so many years, which was pretty much physical activity and just the nutrition side of things. And actually, people are much more complex than just that.
Yeah, but you only get to where you are now from making those mistakes. I was
Absolutely,
thinking
yeah.
this the other day. The first few nutrition clients I had, probably for the first year, my coaching was shit. Like, I mean, I was enthusiastic, I was trying, but I had fuck all idea what I was doing. Um, but it's the best way to learn. Like, jump in, be honest with clients that you're learning. Anyway, we're going off topic, aren't we?
That's
Where
okay.
were we?
There is no topic. This is this you are the topic. So
Oh,
anything you want to talk about, it revolves around you.
you see, I do love that, but then part of me is also like, oh God, it's cringe. But anyway, no, it's good. It's good. So yeah, mum, mental breakdown, was back and forth to the doctor trying to get a physical diagnosis because she refused to accept that it was, despite previously, before having children, she'd had various mental breakdowns throughout her life. She wouldn't accept that's what it was. She stopped working when she was, hang on, let's think, was she maybe 50, 52? So obviously that put like financial pressure on my dad. And they'd always had a really volatile relationship, like arguments, not spending quality time together. And I mean, all parents argue, right? That's normal, but like constant, literally constant. Um, and that put more pressure on him. So they like drifted further apart. She then decided to tell everyone that she had, now I always get these two things confused. There's chronic fatigue, which is very much a real thing. But then there's, is it ME or MS that's similar?
I'm not entirely sure, in honesty.
Okay.
I think
So,
I've heard of fatigue being associated with both, but for the sake of anyone listening that does know what they're talking about, I definitely don't want to say it's definitely that one because I'm not entirely sure.
so I'm trying to remember, but this was when I was like 14, 15. She basically told everyone she had a physical condition that she'd been diagnosed with, which she didn't. And I knew she didn't because she'd go for these doctor's appointments, which were easy to get back then, much easier than it is now.
Oh, different tangent, that one. Let's not go down that road.
Let's not go down that road. Yeah, it is what it is. And absolutely love the NHS and GPs. Anyway, not that we need to say that. But she would go to the doctor and they'd be like, look, nothing's come up on your recent blood tests or your scans or whatever she was having. But these are the sort of lifestyle interventions you can put in place. You can eat better. You can get outside for some daylight. All the great stuff that most GPs do recommend to patients. And I remember being like, right, let's go out. We'll do a 15-minute walk together. And then we'd get home and she'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then she'd be in bed all day and then she'd go out on an evening. She never like drank to excess, but she'd like go see friends, go to this tennis club that she went to. And I could never understand why she can't get out of bed in the day, but she won't do these things to help herself. And I guess that was when I first started understanding about self-development, even though it wasn't a thing. I was like, well, if you want to improve your health because it's bad, because of choices you've made, or because of genetics, or because of mental health, or whatever it is, you have to do those things to move forward. And it might be uncomfortable, it might be effort, but that's what you've got to do, because what's the other choice? Like, you accept it and you stay in bed all day, because that's not a life anyone should want to live. So then mine and my mum's relationship declined from that point, because I was living, and I remember people would phone up, because this was when you had landlines, and like as a kid you always run to answer the phone, so I'd always answer and people were like, oh, is your mum there, like how's she doing, like, oh, it's really bad, and I'd be like, yeah, well, she's been out. I didn't say this, but I'd be like, oh, been out 4 nights this week, like, is it that bad? And then 10 minutes before, I'd have been having a conversation with my mum and she'd be talking normally. As soon as she answered the phone, she put on this poorly voice. Now, unless her voice had declined in that 10 minutes, I mean, you never know, but I started realizing a lot of stuff. And as soon as I could, I was like, I've got to go. I've got to leave. I've got to get out. I can't live. I can't see this. My parents are also, God, this is like proper trauma dump. I have had extensive therapy on all of this, which is why I'm okay talking about it. My parents are also hoarders, so you can't get in some rooms in the house. Okay. And that, now it's unmanageable to the point where I do not go in the house because I can't. Now I'm like, I can see my parents outside the house. I can't see my mum on her own. I can see my dad on his own, but quite often he brings my mum, so I have to like navigate that and have my boundaries.
Does that still quite deeply affect you then? Do you find seeing your mum quite a triggering experience?
Oh yeah. Like, I've learned so much over the last, I'd say like 4 years, of how to stay as calm as possible, but we're all human. Like, I lost my shit with her the other week because we'd gone, if I ever see them, it's outside. We go for a walk, we might go for a coffee, but I can't even like sit inside. It would have to be an outdoor. So even in this weather. And we were queuing up for a coffee. and there's some seating in this place that was full, like, and it's a separate outdoor coffee bit to the indoor bit. And she kept being like, oh, well, I'm going to go find us a seat. And I was like, Mum, it's separate. Like, you can't take a coffee from somewhere you've bought it from and sit in somewhere where you buy different coffee. And she was like, well, of course you can. It's the same park. I was like, no, but it's different businesses. Like, you don't do that. And she just was like, no, but I'm going to ask. And I was like, okay, you go ask. And then they told her no. So she came back and she was like, but we'll still go sit there. And I was like, no, we will not. Like, so anyway, I shouted at her. Well, I didn't. I like raised my voice. But I've also learned so much that the only person that's impacted by my stress raising because of her is me.
Mm.
So yeah, I left when I was 16 and unfortunately moved in too quickly with an abusive ex-boyfriend, like my first relationship. How long did I live with him? Maybe like 2 years, which I'm pretty sure that's how long we were together. So much of this, and I don't know if you're the same, and I'm not sure if it's ADHD or maybe like a self-protection method, but a lot of stuff from my childhood is like blank. So I can remember bits and I can remember things that people have told me, but a lot of it, I don't know. Do you know if that's like a thing?
I think it's a very individual thing. I wouldn't like to broadly say my circumstances, not that this is about me, it's slightly different in that I don't really remember my childhood from pretty much before 11. Even
Yeah.
my younger sister now will say things that happened, but I also understand from my own kind of work and therapy sessions that there's probably a good reason I don't remember everything.
Mm.
But then I speak to people that, seemingly had quite a happy upbringing, and they like, oh yeah, I don't really remember that either. So I think it's difficult to broadly say. I think most people have quite vivid, especially if they're happy memories, or even
Mm.
sad, or even the most traumatic and sad ones. They can vividly remember that stuff. But I definitely think there is this, what kind of you suggested, alluded to there, this like self-preservation in that,
Yeah.
and especially with what you spoke about with your food behaviors, maybe. And when I speak to other people about their food behaviors, is the extreme end of the spectrum and eating disorders. It's never about the food. It's about
Mm.
the safety behaviors. It's about the coping and the soothing that these things offer.
Mm. I think
So,
for me with food, it was a lot of it was the attention. So the whole time I lived at home, I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 14 and in and out of hospital. I was never like an inpatient, but like I'd black out and go into hospital for a day and they'd put me on a drip. And I'd be told if you don't start eating, you could end up being admitted.
was that
And I was
attention
having,
then for you, or was it control?
it was attention. So it was if I lost weight, well, I got bullied in primary school for being fat, because kids are lovely.
Aren't they?
Yeah. And then when I started losing weight, I got positive reinforcement initially and then shock when it went too far. And I think a combination of my personality, ADHD, the lack of attention from my parents, I was like, oh, if I keep losing weight, keep getting attention. But then when I was like passing out and going to hospital, I realized, oh, I have to eat more because I don't want to be admitted. Because I've always loved like the outdoors and dogs and like being outside. And I was like, oh, if I'm in a hospital bed on a drip to survive, I can't do that. And I love sports as well from a young age. So that was like my motivation to eat more. But then, as we know, when you have ignored hunger and you've not given your body what it needs for so long, like probably my whole life, which, I realized as I was older, I then started binge eating and I gained weight back, which then got more positive reinforcement because it was like, oh, you're healthy. But I was like, but I'm binging. And then I gained too much, well, not too much weight, but I was then overweight and then felt uncomfortable in my body. So then the bulimia started. And I think with everything that I've experienced and been through, which I know some people will be listening to this and they'll be like, fuck, like I wouldn't change one thing, not one, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I don't think you have to have gone through all of this stuff to be a great coach at all, but it gives me a level of understanding that not everyone has, but you can
Yeah.
still be a great coach without it. But
No, absolutely. I think the depth of understanding, having experienced those things, is just very different. Same as if you've ever been in a larger body and you're coaching people predominantly who are in larger bodies, is your depth of understanding for them. And everything they're going through is totally unique, because there's a huge element, especially when our industry especially talks fat loss, of being rationally minded about it. And even the expression like you have fat but you're not fat, well, that's amazing. But also, if someone's experienced a whole lifetime of being judged based on their appearance, they know that logically, but that doesn't take away from like the emotionality attached to that. So when they jump on the scales and they know that it's water weight, or they know it's eating later at night, is they still feel shit about themselves based on being exposed to certain things their whole lifetime. Being logical and rational about it doesn't even really come into play.
mm. And
So
I
when you speak to clients now that have had similar relationships with food, or questionable relationships with food, is your depth of understanding for them is that much greater, regardless of what the literature says, because often the literature just reflects what you know already based on personal experience. So
yeah,
I do think like both sides of that is really important.
I do. And I think we do have to, like, I have to be careful. And it's something I'm in control of now. But just because I've had an eating disorder or eating problems, that's not an extra qualification. That's
Mm.
not, anything. But
And being wary of
I'm,
projecting that as well onto clients, I think, because just basing it on another, she's an eating disorder specialist, so I'm not going to name her, it's not my place to. I know she does talk quite openly about this, but based on her own eating disorder and illness in the past, is when she's going through difficult bouts in her life, I know she deliberately and purposefully, she will stop working with people with eating disorders.
yeah, you
And
can't. What
as a
happens to them?
no, as like a self-preservation thing. She has a team of people around her. I should caveat it with that. So that's her specialty. She has a team of people. But what she will do is that if she's experiencing things in her life that she knows has the potential to exacerbate her own struggles, so whether it be she's projecting her own struggles onto other clients, or
Oh, right.
or taking on some of their difficulties which she can't regulate her when she can't regulate her own, is as a self-preservation thing, she'll like opt for them to work with someone else. So I guess there's two sides of thought with both of that. Like if you're experiencing your own eating disorders and you're working with people with eating disorders, you're too close to it.
Oh,
You know,
yeah. That is,
you
that
can't be
is,
objective.
no. And yeah, and I always get asked, can you fully recover from eating disorders? Until a few years ago, I didn't think you could. I thought that voice will always be there, that urge. But with what I know now, and like all the stuff we talk about, that then it's funny because I always have these conversations with my husband. And when I put like Q&A boxes up, people will always be like, oh, you're so open. Like you put everything online. Like, does that affect you? And I'm like, I put nothing online compared to what goes on in here. Like what I've talked to therapists about, what I talk to my husband about, what I journal. Like literally what I put online, it doesn't even scratch the surface, even if I've typed loads and gone in a really in-depth answer, because I didn't think you could fully recover. You absolutely can, to the point where nothing triggers you. Like it doesn't even make you think, oh, I need to be careful in that situation because in the past it did. Like nothing. And I'm not saying I won't, something might happen in the future that does trigger me, and then that's something for me to work on, right? But especially because I now know, and this is a question that I've asked myself, did you have eating disorders? Was it ADHD or was it both? And it's both, right? But hand on heart, when I was a size, because I've been a size 0, which for my build is insane, I've been a size 18 and then I stopped buying clothes, and I think I've got a bit bigger. And I appreciate there's people in larger bodies than that. I'm not saying those numbers for any comparison, but the size 0 and the size 18 to 20, I hated my body at both sizes and everywhere in between because of how I was treating myself, because of what I was doing. And we know you could be in a physically healthy looking body, but be maintaining that through disordered eating behaviors. And I know that firsthand. So it's just really sort of eye-opening that I always thought you can't properly recover. And I think so much of this does come with age. It comes with that work. It comes with calling yourself out to the point where it feels like you're punching yourself in the face.
Well, that's probably the really important point, I think, there is that it takes constant work for you and has done over many years, which I think is reassuring, possibly reassuring, or especially with a managing realistic expectations point of view to anyone listening to this is often just modern society and the like day and age of Amazon Prime where it's swiped to get something the next day. This stuff takes constant work. It takes time. Like you're reflecting on a place now, and forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, where you can kind of report on these things from a place of scarring rather than being amidst the experience of it there and then and being in the middle of it, which is very different, you know, same as when we talk about mental illness and someone being in the deepest, darkest depths of depression and then claiming to be able to help other people. You're just too close to it. Whereas based on this work you've done for a number of years is you can reflect on those experiences, not to say you'll never go through them again. Obviously, fingers crossed. Like, I don't think anyone wants to, but unfortunately, life has a habit of throwing us curveballs that sometimes we don't know what we're going to be exposed to. We don't know when those experiences of trauma or traumatic events or something triggering will come up again. So I think it's an awareness of, I always refer to it as like a dimmer switch. Like with that inner critic, it's not that it entirely goes away. You know, this is based on many things. It's how critical we are of ourselves, where it's based on how you feel about your body image, from a day just feeling a bit insecure to go swimming to another day where you just don't want to leave the house. It's the thought interruption. It's the being aware of that's there. Can I pick it up? Can I associate it to actually what I'm truly feeling about that? And can I just learn to turn the volume down on that a little bit? So it might be that it never goes away entirely, but I can at least manage it and regulate it to a point that I can turn the volume right down. So it's not all consuming, because I'm sure you work with people, especially with body image as well. When you're in amongst it and you're totally preoccupied by your body, that's all that takes up your headspace. But if you can learn to identify that and turn the volume down on it, that's different.
Yeah, I didn't think about anything else when I was struggling with eating disorders. And then it's all so mad, isn't it? Because you're totally right about that switch. And then we go through so many different things. And I think if people have used food or abused food or eating disorders, whatever we want to say, in the past, you're more likely to go back to that if something does happen in the future. Because, and again, I can relate to this more recently, like since I've worked with your amazing friend Emma, my business has gone from like great to better than great. And I'm busier than I ever thought I could possibly be. And then my default, the first thing that goes for me is food. Like, I don't make time to eat. I get to lunchtime and I'm like, oh, I'll grab a protein bar and a piece of cake. And then it gets to 5 p.m. and I'm like, oh, fuck, I should eat something, but I'm not going to prioritize it. So
that's that safety thing again, though, isn't it? It's like, I'm familiar with this. I know this provides ease, even if it's for this little moment in time. And also it's got an element of predictability. Kind of why I think I read something recently about like a lot of the reason why when we go to Netflix and things like that, people will rewatch the same things because they know there's an element of predictability. They know what the experience they're going to get from that. Like they don't want to risk, I know it sounds like a really abstract use of the word, but almost risk not enjoying something because trying this thing, I know how that film's going to make me feel.
It's comfortable.
Yeah, music choices. I know what tracks are going to make me feel good. I don't really want to delve in and try something new. So when life is overwhelming, you want an element of predictability.
I mean, yes, to a certain extent, but I think for people that have gone through eating issues. Definitely for me, not for everyone. There was a huge lack of self-respect. There was a lack of self-worth. There was a, I don't matter, I'll be okay. And that played out throughout my life in like relationships, friendships, situations, career decisions. And I guess that huge lack of self-worth was what was driving disordered eating as well. But I know a lot of that does come from ADHD tendencies, because it's like you're impulsive. And I was never impulsive. I was impulsive with alcohol. But a lot of people think ADHD. Well, I was impulsive with money. Oh my God. I was thinking the other day how much money I have spent, wasted, literally just frittered away, thinking that I was like fucking P. Diddy or something.
Was it on
Because I,
specific things, or is it just on anything? Because I've heard of like patterns of. Are you familiar with Gabor Mate's work? He had this thing about collecting music, so he'd always just spend frivolously on music, but that like it
so
was specifically music.
no, my ADHD makes me want to look after everyone. So I would lived with four of my friends, had the best time. We lived in like the student area in Leeds. We weren't students, we were just acting like students. And I used to be a banker. And after that, I was then a financial advisor. And this was when, do you remember the great days of like PPI?
Yes.
So if anybody in Leeds had PPI, I sold it. Like, I'm a salesperson through and through. I just struggle selling myself and coaching, but that's a different story. But
So is
you
that
give
because
me,
that relates to your self-worth?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't even mean to say that. That just fell
No,
out
no,
my
no, no,
face then.
no. But like, I know I'm incredible at what I do. And then part of it is the self-worth struggles in the past. And part of it's also a bit of, I guess, my ADHD overconfidence of being like, well, if people want to work with me, they'll know what I do anyway, but they don't, because like people need that information about what it is you do and what you can offer and how you can help them. And again, that's what Emma's helping me with. Because, you know, for 4 years, I built up a coaching business without promoting coaching. I didn't ever have on my social media what I did. Like, I had clients, I would
Sophia,
meet.
you are talking to the worst person about this. I don't know whether
I
you
know.
realised self-promotion really isn't my bag. So the fact that you're speaking to Emma is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, isn't
But
it?
I can attentively listen and nod my head here and go, yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
And then I'm just like, we aren't doing humans in the world justice by not knowing what we can offer them. But anyway, I know we've spoke about that before. What were we saying? This is another thing. Go off on tangents and forget what we were talking about.
I think you were in the process of saying basically you bankrolled your friend's lifestyle
Oh
in
yeah.
Leeds.
Woo. So yeah, PPI, massive salesperson. I had to be the top of every leaderboard. I had to be the most qualified. I had to earn the most money. I was working 6 days a week, getting up at 5 to be in the gym at 6 to powerlift. And I was also studying a full-time diploma in financial services. And I was going out every Friday, every Saturday. I just didn't sleep. Like, I was fueled on
Burning the wick
caffeine.
at both ends.
Oh, every end. Like, every way you could burn it, it was burnt.
Mm.
And I had the best time of my life. It was amazing. I was single and with ADHD, and also because I'm very much like live your life. Like, I would just go out and like get with random people, which I think I held a lot of shame about that in the past. And it's still not something I'm proud of. Like, I was single and I did what I wanted to do. It's funny because obviously some of it's behaviors, some of it's ADHD, and it presents very differently in different people. So I've always been impulsive, but with an intense fear of illness and death, which is why I've never touched recreational drugs, even though like went through a period of time where all of my friends did. Like, they were all over the house. We'd go to Warehouse Project in Manchester and stay for the weekend. We'd go to raves. and I'd be there with a shot of vodka and a bottle of water. Everyone's fucked off their faces, having the best time. And because now I know being in that environment with that music was amazing for my dopamine, it was like I was on drugs anyway. I didn't need it. And I was terrified. And because I had amazing friends that I'm still friends with now, I was never pressured to take anything. But yeah, so like I would get with random people, but it was like someone that I'd met on a night out, and then I would never be stupid and risk getting pregnant or catching an STI. And so it was always like I was conscious, but I was still doing these things. And then I always had rules where I would never sleep with someone from work, sleep with a friend's ex, or sleep with a male friend.
I think they're pretty good rules.
Well, yeah. So that always got me through, I guess, like maintaining my important friendships.
Yeah, like there's nothing self-destructive in there. That sounds quite calculated and sensible. Not that I'm
but I didn't know
trying
where
to
that came
rationalize
from.
it.
I
Yeah,
didn't know where that came from, because like I'd get a bonus sometimes that would be, I hate talking about figures with money, but thousands of pounds, which at the age of 23, when you're living with friends, is stupid. But there weren't caps, there's limits on bonuses now. I mean, they still earn mad money, they just earn it in different ways. But anyway, and it would get to like Friday, and like everyone would come to our house for pre-drinks, and I'd have bought like all the pre-drinks, I'd have bought food. There'd be people that I'd be like, oh, I'm just coming to have drinks, but I can't afford to go out. And I'd be like, of course you can, I've just got a bonus. Like, and it would just be gone that weekend, like the whole thing. And it was great. I wouldn't change it. Like,
So when did you start reflecting on these things and start recognizing maybe they weren't the most self-serving? I think, is that the best term to use?
I think so. I bought a house with a partner who I talk about that relationship quite a bit, because it was the long-term relationship before my husband. And I was with him for like 3 years. We bought a house together, great guy, but just wasn't right for me. So that was difficult to leave, because we had loads of friends like intertwined. We had a house, we had Apollo. And I could have stayed and I'd have had a great life, and he was super respectful, but he just wasn't the right person for me. And now I know he didn't get my ADHD, and he suppressed me. So
was that just like a feeling of intuition then? You just had a gut feeling that things weren't quite right. There was a little bit of you misunderstood? Because it's interesting, because when you talk about all those things, I think that there is an innate thing in all of us to be seen, heard, and understood on the most basic human level. And it seems like there were occurrences where you didn't feel that way.
Yeah,
and I think I can reflect on those myself as well. And I think possibly anyone listening to this can reflect on periods of their life where they desperately want to be seen and understood, but haven't been.
Yeah, I just felt like there was more to a relationship. Like, I felt like there wasn't, and there never was, when I think about it, that spark and that connection. And I think at the start of a relationship, yeah, okay, we know that's probably more intense, but that should still be there within the relationship. And it's not there as often the longer you're together. This is, by the way, this is a relationship for me, which so many people want different things in relationships. And I know that. But for me to have that intense passion and chemistry and spark, that's super important. And that's on an emotional communication level that me and my husband have, and our relationship and our connection and our passion and chemistry gets more and more the more we communicate. Like, he called me out yesterday. He was like, "You're really struggling to be present at the moment." Like, how many men are that emotionally intelligent to even know what that means? Like, he's 6 years younger than me as well. And he, oh my God, he's amazing.
Sounds
He's
like
so,
you've got a keeper.
yeah, he's so supportive without being suffocating. Like, I could come home and be like, and this with ADHD, because he's got ADHD as well.
Okay. Well, that gives him unique insight into you and what you're experiencing, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not that you have to be with someone that has it if you have it. Like, no, that doesn't. They just, you can't be suppressed, or you can, but you won't ever feel free and be happy, truly happy. But yeah, he calls me out all the time, but then he just lets me do what I want to do. If I came home and I was like, babe, there's like 15 dogs that are rescue, we have to take them, he'd be like, let's get in the car, where are we getting them from? Like, I can be like, I want to go to the moon tomorrow, and he's like, right, how are we getting there? Like, he just, but then he's got his own shit going on, he's got his own passions, his own hobbies. Like, we
I think
very
that's
much,
important for relationships, full stop, is that you've both got your own
yeah,
separate worlds as well.
I think so. And like, we just talk about everything. We don't watch TV. Like, every night we just chat. And sometimes it's deep, but you can't have that all the time because it's too intense. But yeah, he's my best friend. Like, and I didn't think it was possible to have that in a relationship. And I know, look, right, we've been together 5 years, so it might be a very prolonged honeymoon period. I don't know. But both of us put the time and effort into our relationship, and that doesn't mean we're perfect. We both fuck up every day, but then we're like, right, fucked up, what can I do better? What do you need from me? Like, just an example, some of my clients are into like crystals and moon ceremonies and all that stuff, and look, I love it, but it's not, and I get the benefits for some people. And when it was a moon day a few weeks ago, I like,
Mercury in retrograde.
is that what it was?
I don't know. I'm joking. I've heard of that one. I'm not into them, but I've got this thing about, look, if it's placebo or not. If it's placebo, it's working. If it's working, it's working. Like,
But placebos
whatever.
work.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. If doing something makes someone feel better, regardless of whether it's evidence based, as long as it's not harmful to them, it's not harmful to anyone else. I've no issues with it at all.
no. And one of my clients told me what to do for like the moon ceremony. So I told him, I was like, right, I'm doing this. Do you want to do it? And he was like, yeah, fuck it. Why not? So we did this moon ceremony. It was so funny. Like, I can't even explain. So funny. But we wrote what we wanted to leave in 2022. We wrote what we were bringing in 2023. And then, like, just having someone that will, like, not even just entertain it and be like, oh, you do it, but we'll be like, yeah, of course I'll try. Like, why not? What have I got to lose? And it makes things very difficult because we're creative, we are passionate, we are excited, we're enthusiastic, but we're not practical. So like, our oven broke and we didn't replace it for 2 years because we're like, well, we've got an air fryer, so we'll just use that, or we'll just use the hob. Um, and like, he'll do stuff like round the house, but it's not his natural. You know, if something's broken, we'll both just look at it for a while. Like, I've got mortgage paperwork. They keep sending more stuff. We've not opened. I can't open it.
That's all
Like,
right. I don't ever open my post either.
what happens to it then?
Mine, um, depends what. I don't think it's anything urgent anyway. Things like bank statements, they'll be in a pile, and when it comes to doing my accounts, they'll all come out at once and cause me mega stress and things like that. If you don't mind me asking, so your diagnosis of ADHD as something you long term expected, was that something? Did you go to your GP or did you do that privately? Because I've heard quite a few people go private.
Yeah, I had to because, well, I guess I one thing I'll never do when it comes to my health mentally and physically is wait. Um, and I say I'm lucky enough to be in a financial position. I am now that I have strict boundaries with my money and I control what I spend it on. Like, I sacrifice nights out to pay for Emma. I sacrifice shopping to pay for the ADHD diagnosis. I shop in Aldi so that I can pay for private blood tests, which I did the other week. Like, the wait list at my GP,
Priorities for you, which is different for everyone, right?
yeah. 100%. And I get that. And, you know, it's took me to get to this age to think like that. Because as we've heard in the past, I would have been drinking it away and, you know, wasting it on stupid things. But I say stupid things, but one thing I've always done, hand on heart, is what I thought was the best thing at the time for me, for everyone around me. Like, we've all as humans done stuff in the past that we wouldn't do now, and we don't like decisions we've made. Like, that's just, again, as we are. And I won't ever lie about that, because I don't think it's helpful, because people hold so much shame about their past, so much resentment towards themselves. And you have to be able to live with it, because so much of what we've spoke about, like my parents, eating disorders, alcohol, sex, all of that stuff, that was still a choice. I was still in control.
And that's all contributed to who you are now. So there's no point in denying it either. But I think
No, but
that's what's so refreshing about you. One of the many things that's refreshing about you is because I think, especially with social media, it kind of sets people up for deception. They naturally fall into this like performative, I must do this because I know this will appease people, or people will find this popular, or I'll get likes for this, or I'll get likes for that. Oh, I won't put that out there, even though I genuinely believe that and think that, because it might upset people. Whereas I think he's actually crying out for more transparency. Obviously, you can't be entirely transparent. It's just not appropriate. I don't think people want to go to social media for that.
well, I
But
think
there's some
you,
honesty there. There's some
you,
candid conversations that are necessary.
yeah. And I think, and again, this is me, other people use social media for different things. If I'm ever struggling mentally, you won't see it on social media. I do stuff in, like, is it called in hindsight?
Reflecting back.
So, like, I was
Yeah,
diagnosed with
place of
ADHD.
scar, place of
Yeah,
scarring we spoke about.
yeah. Because, like you said, with eating disorders and struggles, you can't do it when you're in it.
Mm.
And, like, we're all very much in it and going through it and learning. And, like, so before my ADHD diagnosis, I was like, I know everything about my food relationship. It's in an amazing place. I eat what I want. And what was really quite, I guess, transformational for me was being able to diet this time last year for a photo shoot. And I was like doing loads of reflection as I did it. And it was like, why do I want to do it? What's the purpose? All of that stuff. Like, very aware of that. I'm weighing myself every day. I'm checking photos. So that will have a negative impact on body image. It can't possibly have a positive impact, not when you diet in a healthy body. And then after I finished the diet, I just said to my coach, who's a great guy and was super supportive of the way I wanted to do things, because I was like, will not lose my period, will not lose my sex drive, like, non-negotiable.
Do I remember you telling me that you manage your own nutrition as well?
Yeah.
That was
So
one
he
of your
gave
prerequisites.
yeah. So he did my training, my check-ins. He recommended macros, which were pretty much right, but then occasionally I'd go over under however it was. And after we finished the diet for the photo shoot, refused to call it a prep because I hate that word. Photo shoot diet.
Me too.
I've never prepped. Like, you've been shredded before. I was just like toned, which was great. But yeah, you've been like lean.
Well, I think it just, you can reflect on different parts of your life and just think a totally different person. Like, the last time I went to those depths so it would have been before Mila was born. And I think I did a photo shoot like 4 or 5 weeks before my last show.
Mm,
And I got to that photo shoot and I felt great about the shoot, but I
mm,
began to resent the process. And actually, what I can reflect on now is I had no business, like, for many reasons, getting into physique sport, but I hated posing. There was no part of the show that I enjoyed. It was more
mm.
the milestone that I could prove it to myself. So I guess a realization I made at that last photo shoot was I've done what I needed to do. So for the 4 to 5 weeks after that, I hated it, hated every single moment of it, hated the show. Mila came along, big shift in priorities anyway, because there's something incredibly quite selfish when it comes to
Mhm.
bodybuilding prep. You know, I'm not a small person, dieting on 1,700 calories a day, training twice a day, going
Oh,
going to the shops with Rosa for planned days out and actually being so exhausted, having to stay in the car and sleep because the only energy I had was to get those training sessions done. Nothing about that was healthy, which is why I can admire bodybuilding for what it is.
yeah,
And weirdly, if you compare that to any other sport on the planet, is peak day, show day, performance day, competition day for any other sport, is you are there to perform at your best. Whereas for
yeah,
bodybuilding, it's an acceptable norm that you are the shittest you've ever possibly been. You're the weakest. You're probably hormonally through the ground. Mood is
yeah,
through the ground. There's nothing healthy about it. But as a sport, you know, arguably, is there anything balanced about competitive sport? It's probably not. So I can admire and appreciate what people go through, but when our industry glamorizes it or evangelizes it, I have a bit of an issue with that. Like
yeah.
people that do bodybuilding prep and they claim to enhance your relationship with food, enhance your relationship with body image. That
Or
they're
cure your eating disorder.
Yeah, I mean they're
Yeah.
polar opposites. They're polar opposites. It's marketing spiel.
Mm.
Or when people use their bodybuilding to sell coaching when actually they're getting anyway, that's a side tangent. But yeah, I
Yeah,
can again, it's that
I
reflecting on in hindsight and actually saying, I think I think I am positioned, or at least I think myself, to be able to shit on that stuff because there's this common misconception that it's only people that anti-diet that slag off diet culture and physique competition and bodybuilding prep. Whereas I've done all that stuff. I'm not anti-diet. Predominantly who I work with are based on body composition goals. But I have the experience of going through that and taking a lot of people through that to be able to now shit on that and acknowledge the least healthy aspects of it. It's not healthy.
see. I've got like a different perspective on that.
Okay.
So I think bodybuilding. Look, I don't think you're in the trenches and it's the best achievement of your life. But I think what you learn on that journey, if bodybuilding is all you do with it, unless you go into the Olympia or um your whole coaching business is bodybuilders, it's a waste. Like the skills that you learn from that level, because let's be honest, discipline, dedication, relentless pursuit of the goal, whether it's a right goal to have or not, there's not many people that can do that. And if you can use that in other areas of your life, which is why so many bodybuilders are successful business people.
Mm.
I
Oh yeah,
also
I've listed the countless negatives there, but I definitely learned a whole bunch of positives. So I should probably have caveated that with there's loads of positives to come out of it, but just not necessarily a goal I would ever revisit.
no, no. And that's fine to know. And so when I first got into the fitness industry, oh my God, you would kill yourself laughing. I'll send you some photos sometimes at some time. Um, I was very much living a bodybuilder lifestyle without competing because I won't ever compete in sport. Even like with BJJ now, like I just do sport for fun. So I lived like a bodybuilder for fun.
Is
I
that because
was
you have a feeling about the tendencies it will bring out in you?
because I'm so competitive. I'd have to be the
Mm.
best, the leanest, win everything. And I just don't have the headspace or the capacity for that with my business and with me
Mm.
prioritizing my marriage and dogs. Um, that's not to say people couldn't do everything I'm doing and compete if they want, like whatever. But I just, yeah, it's my downtime. So anyway, this is like 9 years ago when I had disordered eating to maintain a lean physique. But like I would never then say, and obviously I say, if you're a lifestyle person, why would you want to live like a bodybuilder? Like you need to learn how to live your lifestyle and maintain a healthy body weight. Like that's what you need to focus on learning. And I massively believe that. And I went through a period of time where I was like, bodybuilding is full of dickheads and they're all stupid, not in those words, but sort of that message. And now I'm like, but that was a part of my life that took me to where I am now. And I have so
Mm.
many friends that are bodybuilders. My husband used to be one. Like I've seen, and again, some people will be like, oh, it's not impressive, but he works 12-hour shifts and he used to do a lot of overtime. Like now we're prioritizing our marriage, like it's not as much. But he would get up at 3 a.m. to do an hour of cardio, get showered and be at work for 5, work 12 hours with a physical job, and then go to the gym, train, do more cardio after, come home, go to bed, and do the same thing over and over again. And this was when we just got together. So we were very much in like the honeymoon, the actual honeymoon part of our relationship. He was still like being able to prioritize me to a certain extent. And seeing someone do that again and again and again, you can't not be like, well, this human is capable of amazing things. Like, and now he's not, he still kind of lives like a bodybuilder, but doesn't compete anymore. And he might compete again. He'd have my full support if he wanted to, because I love it. I thrive off that. Like, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're having the routine. And for me, I don't want to live like that. And with the diet that I did last year, I can almost flick a switch and it's like, right, we're going. I'm actually starting dieting either the end of this week or next week, whenever, because I've got a new coach, whenever my program comes through. Because I've got another photo shoot. I've got loads of photo shoots booked, and I just, whatever my body is at that stage, like that's how I'll look. I've got one in a couple of weeks that I won't have even really dieted for, and that's not the point of it.
I think that's the difference. And I think that's like great that you have that and your husband has that. And I think that's kind of why I like to stress that, especially with my messaging. It's not that I think anyone should have any specific goals. Everyone has experience of their own. Everyone has a right to their goals. I think it helps from an understanding point of view where the motivations and drivers for those goals come from, but also that you can disassociate from that at the end of that process. Like, that is a goal that I've dealt with, and now I can focus on something else. Or I continue to do that, but I maintain it in and amongst the life challenges that I'm experiencing. But I think what we see are the two extremes, like the two pendulum swings quite often. The people that are stuck in it because they're in these disordered patterns, they don't know a way out.
Yeah.
So use it as a justifiable means. And I think you was talking about like what your eating disorder gave you. And I think people have the same in terms of how they view success. People that throw themselves into work, people that throw themselves into slightly controlled behaviors around food. But a lot of this is kind of societally driven. And I think it's as long as you can separate yourself from what the external is telling you, and those drivers come internally, I think that's the most important thing.
That comes with life, though. Like,
yeah, that definitely comes with experience. And I'm saying all that as someone that did all these things that I'm now shitting on
yeah,
10,
you don't
15
shit on it badly. Like, I'm not saying that, but it's like when I finished the diet last year, like stopped with my coach, and I remember, so we went out for a meal after the photo shoot, and I was like, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And then I was like, well, I've not got a coach. I'm not tracking calories now, because straight away I wasn't going to reverse diet. I wasn't going to keep weighing myself. I was like, I just go back to everything I was doing before I started this diet, because I know that works for me. And then I was like, I can eat whatever I want. When we got to this cafe, which has gorgeous food, and I was like, but then I could come back to the cafe tomorrow and eat whatever I want, and then the day after. So like, I was so aware that like my hunger hormone would be high, like leptin would be low. So when I'd eaten a meal and then I had the urge to eat more, which with ADHD and food relationship, oh my gosh, it's insane. But I get dopamine from food like a lot of people do. So when I eat a meal, quite often, if I'm not busy, I'm like, oh, I want something else. I want more, because it felt great to eat tasty food. But then just sitting with that and understanding that you don't have to then act on it, but you can. Like, that full permission to eat is so powerful. So then, like, I'd get some chocolate after the photo shoot and have it mindfully as possible, and be like, you can eat more after if you're done, but just eat this slow and taste it. And then quite often, at first, I'd go get more, but that reduced over time. And then I said to myself, like, do you want to diet again? And what will it add? And for me, this sounds, I guess, like maybe big-headed or vain. I like the fact that I could have abs if I want. And I know that if for whatever reason, while I'm doing a diet for a photo shoot, if I decide actually it's not the right thing, it's not serving me, it's adding more stress and pressure, which funnily, the busier I am, the easier it is to stick to a diet. I'll pull that plug and I'll still do the photo shoot and feel incredible and look incredible, because my worth isn't attached to those abs, but it's like just lifting up your top and it's like, that's cool, like not that bothered, crack on.
Yeah, I think that
And
sounds
I
incredibly
actually,
empowering. I don't think that sounds arrogant at all. I think that's that heightened self-awareness that you have. And like all of us, is we all have this personal choice, this agency that comes with that. And something that's not really spoken enough about, I don't think, in our industry is just changing your bloody mind. Is there's nothing wrong with committing to a
yeah,
process, actually realizing that process, whatever it is, training for a powerlifting competition, training for a BJJ comp, dieting for a photo shoot, and actually getting along the line. And just because you've told a few people about it, change your mind.
so
If it's
what?
negatively, yeah, exactly. If it's negatively impacting you, but I also think there's incredible power in that, in knowing that about yourself and your ability. Because I mean, I'm having to lose weight for BJJ comps over the next couple of months, but I talk about the negatives, but I want to talk about the positives as well. And I think I
Mm,
can do that based on experience, because of, if anyone does come into coaching, and especially people that I speak to, whether it's talks I give or online or anything like that, is I think it's only ethical coaching practice that people know the pros and cons, and that is informed choice. From that,
mm,
they can take what they need to. But I think, unfortunately, because of the nature of social media, is no one likes the unsexy grey. They want the polarized extreme, which is why we see so many characters that have massive audiences that say quite absolute things all the time.
yeah. And
There's
I
some
think,
gimmick attached to it.
and like, you know, and I know, hand on heart, it's healthier for me to not diet. Like, course it is. Dieting isn't healthy. Like, if you're in a larger
It's
body,
called controlled starvation, right?
yeah. But if you're in a larger body and you want to lose body fat, temporarily dieting to get to that point might be healthier for some people. But dieting for most people, if we look at people dieting, probably not. It's not healthy to do long term anyway, because you're literally denying your body what it needs to survive. So yeah, and but I'm prepared to restrict calories for 5 months. I mean, you should see the girl I'm doing the shoot with. She's fucking 10 out of 10. Like, I'm well excited. Um, and I don't need to diet to look amazing in the
Yeah.
outfits or the shoot that we're doing. And it won't make me feel more confident. I felt more confident in the shoot that I did more recently, where I was eating cake, where I wasn't shredded. Like, I was, I don't like the word soft, but I was in my day-to-day body, felt more body confident because I hadn't been checking my body every day in the mirror or weighing myself every day. I just turned up.
Mm. Well,
So
that's the big
I
difference
was
as well,
more
isn't it?
confident.
It's about
Mm.
recognizing the positives that you're taking out of the experience. And because you're doing it for you at the end of the day, again, which is the empowering thing. I think just unfortunately, a lot of people embark on these journeys for all the wrong reasons. And we won't go into it today, but like certainly aligning with your own personal values and the things that you really get joy out of in
Mm.
life, sacrificing all those things. Because I think there's always compromises. If you're going to diet healthily, there's always a compromise, right? If you want to achieve anything in life, you want a more successful business, there are compromises along the way. But I think when you start teetering on the edge of sacrifices, I think sacrifices, especially if they're long term, lead to longer term resentment. Because
Depends on the person, though, surely, because some people would see sacrifice. So, like, for the next, I don't know how long it is, photo shoots in May, however long, 4 months, is it 5 months? I don't know. But I'll be prepared for friends to be like, do you want to go for food? And I'll be like, could we go for a walk instead? Or actually, no, I'm not going to
is
come.
that a compromise? Because it's a definitive end date to that. So it's not like you're committing to that for the next year.
Yeah, I think knowing that it's short term is so good for me, because I'm like, I can go into robot mode
Mm.
for that amount of time. I can eat out of Tupperware for that amount of time. Like, part of it as well, I'm like, is it my ADHD? And I'm like, no, because I always have control, whether it is ADHD or not. Um, and unfortunately, we know, and again, I don't have to do it for this, but lean photos, people go mad for them on social media. So part of me likes having them to then post them and be like, more people will read this caption because I've got abs or because I've got obliques popping out. And what does that tell us about the world we live in?
It's
And
interesting.
I know I'm making that a better place in general, but then we're all a bit vain. Like,
Yeah, and do you know what? I've got no problem with, I've got no issues with any of it. People present themselves how they want. But I think there's something more insightful about acknowledging this for what it is and owning it. I think it's when you've got like this deceptive mask that people put on it, like I'm trying to think of an example. So for example, it might be that, oh, I've grown this Instagram audience of 500,000 followers based on my extensive knowledge, but every picture on my grid is of me half naked. It's like, look, let's just own the fact that being half naked has contributed to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Own it, accept it for what it is, because it's a visual platform.
Mm.
Not everyone's there for the education.
No, of course not. And I know that. Like, again, we've spoke about this. Like, when I put photos up like that, whether I've dieted or whether I've not dieted, if I'm in my underwear, I will get messages from, like, dodgy messages from males. It's never females. Messages calling me fat. Messages calling me ugly.
People are gross.
Oh, they are, and it's fine. Like, I mean, me 15 years ago would have then probably gone and binged and made myself throw up. So I'm glad I get it and people don't. But that's not the point. Like, the point is you could be in any body and people will always have something to say. And you can't control that, but you can control how you respond. And in the past, I would have binged, I'd have made myself sick, I'd have gone on dating apps, I'd have slept with a dickhead, I'd have gone and drank loads of alcohol to numb, because I'm like, oh my God, that one person thinks I'm fat and ugly. You know, one
even though
person
you've got 99 other positive comments on there.
Yeah. And it's like we know that, what's it called? Negativity bias or something.
Yeah. I think we're all naturally inclined and programmed to be a little bit more. I think it takes a little bit more conscious effort to be optimistic. I don't think, especially these days, with the state of the world and everything else, it takes a real conscious effort to be positive and be a little bit more optimistic.
See, I disagree, because I think when you're in that headspace, why would you not do everything to maintain that? Like, I don't watch the news. I don't, like, if someone starts a conversation that I can tell is going to trigger me, I've got no issues with being like, obviously not if it's a client, like they get to talk to me about whatever they want. But like, for an example, if I'm in the gym, people come talk to you because you see them in there all the time. I'll have a chat, but pretty much I want to get in and out. But you know, when someone comes over and they're like, oh, what are you bulking at the moment, or are you dieting at the moment? You know, something that I'm just like, why do I even want to talk about my body to someone I don't know? Straight away, I don't have any issues of being like, sorry, in a rush, might see you next week. Like with my mum, like, I have boundaries. I will not do certain things that compromise those. And look, I do not wake up every single day buzzing my tits off, but most days I do. Most days I genuinely, like, hand on heart, so excited to talk to my clients, so excited to have one-to-ones, so excited to chat to you on this. I'm going to BJJ, so excited to see my friends there. Got a client this afternoon, so excited to see her. And like, I created that. All the shit that's happened, I could be like, that shit's ruined my life. And you don't have to go through shit to be positive, but most people have been through shit. And we're only learning now that emotional abuse is abuse. Like, you know, and again, we've not even touched on it, but like, abusive relationships aren't someone beating you up. I mean, they are, but there's other forms of abuse. Like, you can be raped by a partner, and think, oh, well, it's my boyfriend and I didn't want to have sex, but he forced me. And that's rape. Like, we've only just learned that the last few years. But it doesn't mean you have to go digging all this trauma to upset yourself. It's then you dig it you deal with it, and you'll always be dealing with it because it will display itself in so many different ways, different relationships, friendships, career. So you deal with it, but then you decide, what type of person do I want to be and how do I want to live my life and how am I going to do that? And I don't have, on paper, money wise, I have way less than what I had when I was a banker, when I was a financial advisor. I've got my husband's old car, I wear his clothes. I could afford my own, and I do afford my own, but like, I don't need that. I need my dogs. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment that's in a beautiful village in the countryside. We can't afford a house here. Like, it's.
I'm all for living smaller anyway. I think most of us have very basic, simple needs.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's something that changes with the age as well. I still have friends that are caught up in that material world, and I'll give this account of, he won't listen to this anyway, but a friend, he's very much, I won't say what industry, but he's of that, works in the city, of that industry. And because it is natural conversation to talk about bonuses, holidays, what you spent on what, we were talking about it was like an evening out, and he went, "Oh, you haven't noticed my new watch?" And then I looked at it and I was like, "Do you know what? It's a lovely watch, but my knowledge, I'm a little bit ignorant to it. I can acknowledge it's a lovely watch, but in terms of a concept of how much it would be, I would have no idea." He told me, like, it's not relevant for me too, but a lot more than I would ever spend on a watch. Let me tell you. And he actually turned around. He said, "It's so refreshing not to feel competitive and worry about someone noticing that." I thought for a second, although like in terms of monetary wealth, he has lots. They don't go without him and his family of anything. I actually thought that's a little bit of like a sad existence, that you're having interaction with so-called friends and you've got to worry about someone,
Watch.
valuing your watch and
Yeah.
associating it with how much money you make. When it wasn't deliberate for me, I didn't notice it. I just didn't notice it because I'm ignorant to that stuff. But I just
Yeah.
hadn't noticed this watch.
And some people are money driven, and Emma wishes I was more. But like, I think again it comes to values, and there's nothing wrong. Like, my husband is more materialistic than me. He likes designer clothes. He likes cars. And he's, like, I guess, got that to a better level for him since we've been together. Not that I've made him, he's just got older and he's like, oh fuck, like, we have a house and we have dogs that cost so much money. Like, why are they so
Yeah.
expensive?
I feel like the vets try and rip you off every time you have to visit a vet for something as well.
It's like 50 quid to open the door. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it's 100 for you down south.
Everything's so. I'm just talking about nursery fees the other day. No, we're not talking about nursery.
Oh,
80 quid a day.
are you shitting me?
Yeah. So although I have 1 day a week off with Jax, my youngest, and I always wanted that. That was like, I think, one of the bare basics of being self-employed. There's got to be some perks, right? So I have a Thursday off. That's our boys' day, and I did the same with Mila. Like, I had a Friday off with Mila. We'd go to like base jump the trampoline park, or we'd go for brunch, or we'd just go to the local play pit, or we'd just go to the local park. Like, it doesn't have to involve spending money. But I thought, as I'm self-employed, the one commitment I can make is spend a day with my kids while they're young before they go to school. But actually, it offers two things now: saving money for a day as well, which I never thought it would be. But it's just, yeah, it is ridiculous. I feel like that's a whole separate conversation if that
Yeah.
you do choose to be, and as you are as a dog mum, two full-time, because you can't leave dogs for too long on their own either.
No.
If you were both out of the house all day every day, you then got to look at boarding, which is what you do, your dogs. And this end, I believe, last time we checked, we looked to go on holiday, was like 60 quid a night.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
if you
I
go,
charge. So I'm outpricing myself for new clients now because I've just got my regular clients. Don't ever put prices up for them. But I don't want new dog boarding clients. It's hassle. I do not know how people do it as a full-time business. You get paid when you actually look at what you get paid for people's dogs. That often every dog has its quirks. Apollo's a fucking nightmare. Like, we can't go away. We've got one woman that can look after him. Huskies, do it if you've got the time and the patience.
mm,
Um, But yeah, it's hard to make money from, and you have to have multiple dogs, which means the ones you've got aren't getting proper care, which I wasn't prepared to do that, which is why I only take one dog at once. But yeah, I was thinking about kids then and talking about why I don't want them, and that I've realised recently part of that is ADHD, part of it is my mum, but that's a whole other tangent.
Well, I mean, I would never pry into that, but if you're happy to talk about that, perhaps we can do it another time because I didn't even realise, but we've been talking nearly an hour and 15, hour and 20.
I just saw that and I'm like, God, I need to go to BJJ.
Well, I'll let you go on that note because we haven't even got on to talking about BJJ, which is
No, we
amazing,
haven't.
really. We've referenced it a couple of times, but thank you so much for your time. I think there's so much for people to take away from that conversation. And as I said, like this wasn't necessarily and isn't really a podcast with like real intent in or agenda. I just want to get interesting people on here to talk and just have candid conversation. So I think we definitely achieved that. If people do want to find out a little bit more about you, where can they go, Sophia?
Probably the best place is Instagram. My website's horrendous. Please don't go on that. It needs changing. So yeah, Sophia _ Apollo _ nutrition. But yeah, anything we've chatted about that people relate to, or like I've said something and it's made people think, just open up conversations because more than happy to talk about anything, clearly.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And if you have listened to this and you do, or you've watched it even, and you do like it, subscribe so you don't miss any others. Rate it, share with friends. That all that stuff's helpful, especially if you're not Insta famous. It's the only way it reaches more ear holes. So thank you so much for your time again. I really appreciate you.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate you too. I'll be seeing you soon as well, won't I?
Absolutely.